Hi, I'm Izabela Miller. I am Operation Officer at the Salt Lake Municipal Services District.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Giroux. I am with Slimgim.info and Mass Maturity, and I'm a friend of Izabela's. We're going to go to the previous slide. So here, there's our information. So if you want to take a screen cap, that's a good idea, or take a photo with your phone. Some people like to do that. You'll get our information. And to make it easier for you, we're going to talk about some resources. So we've created a little page here for you to be able to fetch some of those resources to try for yourself after. Okay, and we're off to the races. I'm going to give a little bit of history to start. So basically, like many of you on watching this presentation today, I was struggling with implementing enterprise level GIS. So in 2012, I worked for a local municipality. And the difficulty was not in the technology itself, but it was really trying to get the people aligned to new processes, understanding what this new thing could do, and making sure that they're following processes as related to proper data management. And so I ended up taking that struggle that I had and wrapped it up into Master of Science, which the title is Slimgim, which is Pragmatic Geographic Information Management. And the thesis attempted to create a framework to really understand what are the organizational issues, how do you measure them, and what is the true impact of that on the organization, and essentially on data quality. And so after 2014, I had shared that on the internet. It took off in the Mid-Americas in Iowa, and ever since then it's been growing and expanding, and adoptions grown significantly over time. In 2017-ish, the Departments of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration did a pilot. So several states and a Canadian province actually implemented their own version of Slimgim. So there's a leaner, cleaner version specific to state departments. So it's not just transportation, it works for any state. And now what we're talking about today is essentially how do you use maturity modeling to data drive your strategy. And so I was very fortunate to have some nice people like Izabela and others and other organizations help out with this. And what we did is we created a strategic roadmap template that was based on a methodology we were working towards developing. And in 2018, you'll see here, 2018, we worked with the city of Brampton, that's what COB is there, and Salt Lake County at the time. And we actually created our first strategic roadmap template and ironed out some of the method that we're going to talk to you about today. The neat thing is 7 other organizations have really latched into it, and we really refined the methodology. And now it's actually growing across the planet, so to speak. Okay, so what I'm really here to talk about is Legos, snacks, Legos, and loose screws. And because that's really relates more to GIS than anything else in geospatial. So what we have here is when you're creating strategy, you'll have people start talking about all these things they want: idealistic fluff, pretty maps, magic dashboards are really big right now, cool projects, a bunch of buzzwords, blah, 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 AI and ML. And what really you should be talking about and focused on is what this enterprise thing is all about, right? And in the development strategy, you run into this issue. You'll probably see it in meetings all the time. You may have just come out of a meeting where this happened, but it's Parkinson's law of triviality, which states members of an organization give disproportionate weight to trivial issues. And so when you get a whole bunch of people in a room to start talking strategy, you usually end up talking about things that are quite trivial instead of getting to the meat of what has to be done. And so up with when in these processes where you're talking about trivial stuff is you get the irrelevant things, obsolete, unfocused, shallow fluff of the plan essentially. And you've seen them, they're these big strategies that pile up and they're massive documents that are essentially like elves on a shelf at Christmas, where they kind of go from one shelf to another, but they're these mystical creatures apparently, which everyone knows they're fluff, right? And so Here's a quote for you. A hallmark of mediocrity and bad strategy is unnecessary complexity, a flurry of fluff masking an absence of substance. And I think this goes way beyond just geospatial. You'll see it in IT strategies, corporate strategies, where you have these plans that just really aren't going to make an impact on the improvement of your organization as a whole. Okay, so a takeaway then to start off is first you need to be self-aware. Like your strategy, you need to think about it a little bit differently, and to do that, you need to basically drop strategic feeder, I call it. And so today we're going to talk about how to do that. Our solution is by data driving your strategy using capability maturity modeling. All right, Izabela.
So let me talk a little bit from my perspective when I first got engaged with building the strategy model and maturity model using Slimgim. So before you get there, I would advise you to start focusing on thinking about what is important for you to achieve in your organization as well. Identify the challenges to be aware of them, and what's stopping you from moving forward your enterprise GIS and to really succeed with GIS in your organization.
Okay, and so the best way to know if you're going to succeed in your organization with your strategy, obviously, is we're recommending you adopt the model of success. So no guesswork, right? Just basically grab something that's going to clearly define what it is that your future state should look like. And when you do that, using, for instance, the capability maturity model, it gives you the building blocks and the data that's going to support good strategy. And we'll talk more about what good strategy is throughout this presentation.
Yeah, we play with Legos a little bit.
Pardon me, Izabela?
We will play with Legos a little bit.
And we'll be playing with a lot of Legos, actually, yes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ditch the fluffy ideals, okay? And what I like to do is give people a tangible how. That's how I work. I need to take information, put it in little buckets in my mind, and then actually find a way to work with that information. And so we're going to actually deliver to you a tangible how to do something, okay? Plus, it's going to actually help set a new mindset and introduce you to a method. And all of this basically is maturity as a service with the municipal service district. And so this goes beyond just, one simple spreadsheet that's free and available to everyone. There's a whole lot more that can be done with it, and you need someone who has the chops to basically guide you through that, and that's Izabela in this case. Okay, so what's this model look like? So on the left, what we have is we're basically have our Creative Commons, which means it's out there free and available. And we use that model to measure your whole health, so your enterprise health. And then we snap that into best practices. So one of them is, why come up with avenues to do strategy when you can actually adopt the 3 kernels of good strategy, right? You want a good strategy? Well, read the book and leverage what research they've already done. Next is where everyone struggles with is bridging strategy with action. And so we're going to look at this thing called objectives and key results. Not sure if you've heard of it. A lot of people have heard of MBOs or KPIs. OKRs are similar, but different. And we're going to sell you on the importance of maybe adopting OKRs to help you with your program moving forward. Okay. So the way I look at it is I'm a geographer, but why don't I leverage the hard work of the Intels and the Googles and all the other software companies out there and other firms that are leveraging this management practice, right? Why reinvent the wheel? And so those things are all snapped into the maturity model, which is going to help you drive things forward. And how that's done is first, here's kind of the phases that we go through. So the municipal service district, and Izabela could guide you through this, for instance, is download the model, you do your enterprise health assessment and diagnose what the actual issues are. That's super important. So that in itself is very, very valuable. Even if you end up stopping there, it'll give you the insights you need. The next thing is we take the kernels of good strategy and we actually set direction and actually start building out a roadmap. And that's done by leveraging objectives and key results. And those are designed in a way that you can actually action and track the progress of your plan, right? And you can actually adjust and pivot. So a good example is St. Louis County and we had done all this work and COVID hit. And so we managed to have one meeting and we were able to fine tune our key results in 20 minutes. And so her strategy was able to adapt to what's happening with this pandemic. And we were able to change her actual strategic roadmap in a 20-minute session. So that's the importance of kind of adopting this new way of working strategy. And then of course you got to repeat. And so instead of these long year plans that most people want to get into, this is a little bit more adaptable because you actually get to check the progress of the plan itself and its performance, okay? So we want to do more with maturity as a service. So we want to leverage Slimgim, mass maturity, which is basically a group of people that we're all applying the method the same way and we're learning from each other. And the Municipal Services District has learned how to provide that service to others so that we can get more people on board with this stuff, okay? So to give you an idea of who the original people were, so the blue ones all have basically, they're at the OKR stage or have their roadmaps in place now and they're managing them. The yellow ones and here are ones that were in the middle of reevaluating or adjusting their roadmaps. Or for instance, Ireland, we do a lot of, we spend a lot of time talking about the things we want to do and the challenges, and we don't necessarily get into too much of the roadmap stuff at this stage because things are changing rapidly at the federal level of governments at the moment, including Ireland. So there's the key groups. So you have big cities, regional governments, right? Salt Lake County at the time when Izabela was there. Region of Peel, which is all near Toronto. It's a large area and you have two large federal government divisions. And so it's working at scale and we're also, I use it personally at the utility, local utility level too. So the group of us, so that's the mass maturity. And it's just all of us trying to, boost our maturity on mass. Okay. So what's actually happening now, today, as we talk about this? So the left that I just presented, basically the core group that helped develop this process using the free Slimgim model. And I'm currently coaching 5 other organizations and we're doing this 1 hour every 2 weeks. That's all it takes. And we're stepping through the process. It'll take several weeks. And there's also Izabela's right now going through the process of being able to do the same for everybody who's on the line here or people falling in the municipal service district or elsewhere, okay? So here's the next takeaway. If some of the cool kids are doing it, maybe you should too, right? So there's a little peer pressure for you. All right, this is what our strategies look like. Everyone in the group has a very similar, they have the same template that they get to customize. So on the left here, you see 6 screenshots of some of the report pages. This is the executive reporting level. And then these are all the data-driven pages that are used by the GIS managers, right? And supervisors and coordinators. So that's the data that's generated and it gives deep insight into basically the situation, the current state and how the progress of the roadmap is happening. Okay. So long story short, models are good for creating a shared understanding by providing a model that helps everyone see and talk about the same picture. So that's really important because everybody in this group, we're all geospatial managers and we all get to see and talk about the same picture. If you hand down the results and the assessment model, now everybody in the organization that has that can see and talk about the same thing. The next is models are good for helping keep the big picture in mind while focusing on improvement. So again, you have the picture, but you're actually starting to see what you're supposed to be doing, which is improvement. And finally, models are good for providing guidance and assisting with identifying the next major step. It's not going to set the next major steps for you. It's just going to help you identify what the next major developmental steps are that's going to take you forward. And I think that's the part that everybody's struggling with, right? Is like, how do we go forward? The model is really going to help you do that. So takeaway number 3 is my favorite word, disambiguate. So that's what models do. It's just basically like takes this enterprise, this abstract enterprise GIS thing, and it actually turns it into something real, right? Tangible. This is what it looks like, okay? And we won't get into the measurement scheme too much, but long story short, there's 5 levels. Enterprise is actually level 4. 5 is when you optimize. Each level becomes incrementally or exponentially more difficult to get to. There's a lot of work there. Because there's so many factors in the model, 51, to get a level 4 across the board is almost impossible because there's always something that you have to work on and improve. And so your target is 4. So there's different organizations that are like between 2 and 3, they're struggling. One's between 3 and 4 in pretty good shape. And that's the goal, is level 4 is enterprise. You keep chasing that, and it's a pursuit now instead of just like a strategy, right? So this is the model. Izabela alluded to the fact that we're going to use some Legos today. And this is what the actual model looks like. So each block represents a factor. And if you look at it this way, it's broken down, top down for organizational structure and leadership, corporate culture, process orientation, organizational capacity and capability, sustainability, and foundational data and technologies. And the cool thing is, by using the model, excuse me, you don't know you're doing this, but you're actually looking from the outside deep down into your organization through the top tier all the way down to the foundational data tier, right? So you have a really good view or perspective on what's happening across the board. Additionally, what it does is there's a lot of soft factors at the top. That's the human thing. That's the mess we usually have to deal with. And then there's hard factors at the bottom. These are tangible things that you could buy, right? Or how many data sets have you actually modeled and centralized, that kind of stuff. And so the model does that. It lets you drill down, and it actually like looks at the soft factors and the hard factors, okay? So it takes that all into account. So how do you measure? We're gonna go through that now. So first, there's the factors to remind you in our Lego, right? It's a lot nicer to look at some Legos than that big massive screws and snacks and everything else, right? Here's your blocks. Each factor is a block, okay? And so takeaway number 4 is just actually doing your assessment is gonna be super valuable to you, okay? So even if you never get into full-on strategy, going through the exercise of an assessment with someone like Izabela is really gonna help you get clarity on what's really happening in your organization. It's gonna give you a clear state, clear view of your current state.
What I'm going to talk about is the first 2 steps that Paul touched a little bit on, is the assess and diagnose. And that's where the first, going through the spreadsheet and all the 6 categories with 52 factors, it's very important for you to do, because it really will help you to assess the current state of your GIS environment, not only from the technology perspective, but also including the soft factors, as Paul mentioned before, which is the leadership, the organization, understanding what GIS is capable of doing, and so forth. You?
Me. Hi, everybody. We're getting the hang of it. All right, and I noticed my hair is really big for everyone today, so I did that on purpose. All right, let's carry on. Okay, so I'm gonna actually show you how it's done, okay? So you're like, what is this maturity model? It's just a spreadsheet, okay? And we have 2 columns, maturity or capability, and that's on the level 1 to 5, and then how likely you are to improve on that factor between now and say a year from now, your next assessment, okay? And so the way we do it is we essentially do, you know, what's this factor here is a 4 and very likely to continue on like that or improve. So that's strong and driving. This factor is obviously weak and not likely to improve. And so because it's not likely to improve, that's gonna indicate, haha, there's probably a challenge here, and you're gonna need to explain why. And that's really gonna help you build your strategy, because it's gonna help you identify, you know, the screws to your plan that we showed earlier with the Legos. Is the challenges is what you need to build your your strategy to overcome, right? Not just buying stuff. That's not going to help you get anywhere necessarily. And then finally, there's the opportunity. So the maturity is low, but is very likely to improve. Well, that's obviously something you want to target, okay? And so takeaway number 5 is the model itself provides a raw material for good strategy. We'll get into that part now. So maybe Izabela can talk about this a little bit, or did you want me to cover this one off?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just get someone else to talk for me, so I'm going to use this quote instead. So basically, when people evade the work of choosing among different paths into the future, then you get vague mom and apple pie goals that everyone can agree on. So think about that when you're setting your goals and strategy. That's often where you ended up with something that everyone can agree on. That's not what we're about today. We want to avoid that, and we'll show you how. So what we've said is basically all the organizations that are following this methodology are adopting essentially the same 5 initiatives. And so the first is awareness and engagement. So think with your enterprise GIS program at work, the more that people are aware of it and you have them engaged, the more likely you are to actually drive a transformation, right? Collaboration is when you start getting into like the use of your technology, you're trying to get people aligned to your workflows for data management. And then finally, you need a literate workforce. Like you need just people that can actually handle working in this day and age of GIS, because it's changed significantly, even in the last 2 years. And then corporately, you can build all sorts of cool viewers, right? And cool tools on the web with GIS, but if the general staff don't have the literacy to use it, then it's going to become a problem. And then finally, the key to everything is data management. And then finally, optimization. And so those are the core 5 initiatives we use to drive our strategic improvement, okay? And so if you're gonna do an engagement with a municipal service district, for instance, you're gonna end up having these. You might reword them a little bit, but there's essentially the same 5. And they're designed to create clarity and coherence and alignment, right? And that's what's gonna happen. So I'll show you that slide. So basically, you're going to create 4 things when you do this. When you take the model and you apply the method that we're kind of touching on today, is that you're going to build clarity, which is coherence, alignment, which is congruence, so you get people aligned to what the vision is and to your processes. You got capability, and then finally you're creating like a transformation mindset. So everybody who's involved in reading the plan and understanding what's happening, you're actually getting them to think about things a little bit differently, including yourself, okay? Excuse me. So how do we design initiatives? Back to our magic Lego. You basically take your strengths, take advantage of opportunities to overcome your weaknesses and threats. And that's the magic, right? When you're building strategy, that's what you need to do. And the objective is, let's look at this quote again here. You might be able to drag a giant block of rock across the ground with muscles, ropes, and motivation, but it is wiser to build levers and wheels and then move the rock. So levers, strategic leverage, right? Leverage. And that's what this model allows you to do. When you apply the method, it's all about strategic leverage and just applying pressure in the right areas, right? Those 5 initiatives. And here you go. So now we have our factors, and you notice the colors are shifted around because each initiative has factors from different categories. Okay, and this is my French Canadian way of talking. We talk with our hands a lot, so hopefully I'm not distracting everyone too much. But essentially what you do is, it's just like a lever. You're gonna use your strengths, right? And drivers, and you're going to try to take advantage of these opportunities and try to use all that to prop up things, prop up your weaknesses and your threats, right? But the issue again here is you need to be thinking about things a little bit differently, and so we're going to get into that. Do you have anything to add, or you want me to hop in?
I will start with the strategic thinking. For those who know me, you know I am a strategic thinker, and when I see a challenge, I just want to deal with them. And it's usually most of us in the first instinct, it's to run away from the challenges, burying them under the carpet and never ever come back with it. But those challenges, if not dealt with, they will prevent you from moving forward. But the beauty of this model is it will help you to tackle those challenges, and it will tell you where, as Paul said, the strengths and opportunities exist from your model, so you can leverage that to deal with the challenges and your weaknesses and the weaknesses of your enterprise GIS system.
Yeah, and the neat thing too is because there's so many soft factors like the leadership, the culture issues, that's where a lot of the challenges reside. And because you're forced, you know, with this methodology that Izabela's learned, you're forced to actually define the three main challenges. What happens in there when you have to like put them into these buckets is you actually have three things that are tangible now, and it's easy to report up to the executive what's actually happening, right? So it makes it a little bit easier. And so if you don't deal with these challenges, they're going to keep screwing with their plans, essentially, is what happens there. And that's why I use that analogy in the Legos. Okay, so there's your challenges, right? And it's just what'll happen is until you deal with the challenges, it's going to limit your success, and you're going to waste your effort. Okay. And I've done it all the time, and sometimes I do it. You know, I did it earlier today. So it's tough to do that because you're applying pressure on something, but the challenge still exists. So, you know, it's like, why am I doing this, right? I have to, you know, step back and deal with the issues. So the plan will help identify what those are, and then they're there, and you have to deal with them, right? It's out there, and it's open and transparent. Over time, the plan is to slowly overcome strategically overcome those challenges. And this is a long game. So when you get in the enterprise GIS game, you're the digital transformation person now. You're doing business transformation. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a long game, right? There's a lot of quick wins, but there's a lot of challenges to moving fast, especially in the gov space. Okay. So takeaway number 6, building initiatives, okay? Awareness and engagement, for example. They'll help set direction, okay? So you'll actually they're almost linear. Like you need to do awareness and engagement, and then you got to do collaboration, and then you need to work on workforce literacy, and then more data management, and finally optimization. And so there's some direction to that, okay? So next, Izabela.
I am going to touch base on how to actually build the GIS roadmap from the assessment that we just covered. That assessment, that maturity model will help you to set direction because it will show you where your weaknesses and challenges are, and when your strengths also and opportunities exist, and you can leverage one and then to offset another, and that will help you to set the direction to choose the most important goals that you're going to set for the remaining of the year or the year until you assess again. And based on that information, you build the roadmap, and you can start by having just an annual roadmap. Just build something that you need to tackle right away to help you to move forward, or you look into the future if you have more than 3 to 5 goals and set that as like, okay, this is the long term, this is the short term.
Cool. Okay. And so, in the previous slide, we're talking about essentially this, right? Not reinventing the wheel. And so I'm going to show you, if you don't want to buy the book, it all boils down to this. So the book says you need kernels of good strategy. And this is what's been missing in a lot of places. So let's look at Ramel's recommendation. First, you need a diagnosis that defines or explains the nature of the challenge. Well, we showed you that, right? We showed you how we were doing it with something tangible, which is a spreadsheet, and then thinking about things strategically, like strategic levers. And so that's the diagnosis, is when you go through the maturity model and you look at how things are and identify your challenges. The next is that gets bubbled into policy, but essentially it's like the statement that's going to guide the team and the organization through that roadmap for the year, right? So it kind of puts everything together succinctly into 1 or 2 sentences. And then finally, what we're going to step into now is the exciting part is how do you actually create coherent actions? Not here's a laundry list and we need geocortex, we need an ELA, we needed this, we needed that, we need this viewer or that viewer. No, you need coherent actions that are actually going to help you with that policy and overcome those challenges we talked about. Okay, so that's where we fail. We fail to bridge strategy and action all the time, let's face it. I fail all the time here too, and that's why this methodology is helping me get through it. But I think everybody's seen strategy where it's just not actionable, or within 6 months it's just totally off the rails, right? So how do we get to something a little bit better? Okay, I'll talk to this point. Yep. All right. So what we've done, and this is kind of the secret sauce to everything, is essentially how do you action and track stuff, right? How do you bridge strategy and action? And then how do you adopt something that ties into your strategy that allows you to adjust and pivot? Like right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. What if there's a civil war? Like you still have to provide service. How do you adjust and pivot to things, right? What if there's like a wealth of influx of money into each organization so you can do more with enterprise GIS? You got to be able to switch quick. And so I'm highly recommending you look into OKRs. So why? Back to the kernels, those set of coherent actions, okay? And so let's look at the book. Again, if you don't want to read the book, why do you want to use OKRs? Well, one is OKRs will help you articulate your goals, okay? So that's really important. A lot of us have trouble with that. Two, they'll help you track and measure progress, okay? So yes, there's project planning. This is a little bit different, okay? And then finally, OKRs help you reassess and stretch. And so it's really good when, again, with the pivoting, but it's also really good to really motivate your teams, right? Is to do the stretch goals. And I have a link there. So there's their website, the people that wrote that book, whatmatters.com, tons of information on that site. Okay. So when we talk about roadmap, this is a road. This is our map. And this is actually generated from our spreadsheet, and it's data driven. And so for instance, this initiative here for improve how data is managed and shared at the county. There's two objectives: empower the organization with platform required to support transformation, and their other one is improve their internal data management practice. There's their main objectives, and then two key results, okay? For this one has 7, for instance. But anyways, as they keep track of their OKRs, their roadmap actually progresses here. So it's data driven. So I wanted the roadmap to look like a roadmap, right? But it's all data driven with objectives and key results, which is cool. Okay, next is this is an example of one of the guiding policies. I'll just leave it up there for a second, but you'll see it focuses on some of the key things that have to be done. Like they need a knowledgeable workforce to do this, right? They need better collaboration. Yes.
This does not come from the air, or it does not come from a workshop. Then you have a bunch of people, you know, behind the locked doors, and you're not leaving until you come up with the vision or the guiding policy. This actually is driven by that spreadsheet, by the work you've already done, that will help you to define and see what are the issues that you're trying to tackle. So this one statement basically wraps up all the work you've done so far.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. It's designed to, you know, use those initiatives to overcome those challenges, right? So everyone's guiding policy, they'll probably be similar because we all have the same challenges or similar challenges, but everyone's will be worded quite differently. The city of Brampton's is probably twice as long as this one, for instance. And everybody's is unique to their own situation. Okay.
Repeat annually.
Repeat annually. That's it. More mature organizations can probably do it in a 6-month cycle, right? but I think the vast majority of us have to do it annually just because there's so much there. We have to orchestrate the change. So there's a lot of meetings and, you know, trying to sell it to senior executives, so on and so forth. And so that's why 1 year is good enough. Okay. So we're going to actually show you how to build a roadmap, data-driven strategic roadmap. And instead of Slimgim, which has 6 categories and 51 factors, we'd never have time to do that. I'm going to show you how to do it with this fantastic family maturity model. So same, it's top down, leadership, culture, cooperation is the categories. And each of those has 3 factors. So it's a 3x3, it's a 9-factor model. And if you want to actually go and grab it, go for it. So it's a Google Sheet. You can just go save a copy as, and you can assess your family and come up with your own roadmap for improvement. Okay. So yes, indeed, we're going to build data-driven strategic roadmap in under 5 minutes. Okay. Your GIS one's not going to take 5 minutes. It'll take, you know, several weeks of our session. But here we go. So I'm going to show this video. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm assessing maturity and likelihood for each factor. Okay, I know the family well because theoretically this might be mine, not sure. And then what I can do is, okay, I can see where, first of all, I'm doing well. So I'm just highlighting those in this case. And it's a spreadsheet, so you can add columns or do whatever you want, right? Or work with Izabela and she can tune your sheets. Then I'm marking my weaknesses, okay? So these are areas I'm doing poorly. And now I'm filling out the template on the right. So here's where I'm strong. And then I'm gonna look at where some opportunities are or quick wins. So this one looks easy. That's maturity's low, but it's likely to improve. And then what are weak factors? And many of the weak factors will be your challenge, right? And so I'm populating those, and you're gonna notice that I'm gonna strike one out. And the reason being is that one factor is gonna be tackled in another initiative. It doesn't really fit this initiative. So I'm just doing a review and I'm calling this one, the initiative is gonna overcome this challenge. So basically, I'm a lousy parent to have no rules and it's totally unclear. So I need clarity and accountability in the family. And now at the bottom, you see I'm quickly doing this way quicker than I did it to develop this. But basically, here's our objectives and key results, okay? So this is it, clarity and accountability. There's my strong factors. And then finally, objectives and key results. And so here, what you have is your roadmap. If you think about the pieces that are required to do strategy, we did one initiative here. So the initiative is clarity and accountability, okay? And that's the initiative name. The objective is adopt clear values and goals the family can get behind. There's some key results in there. And then another one is become a human connected family, not device connected. If you notice, these things are all measurable. Okay, that's the neat thing about key results. So we're gonna have a no device family dinner 3 times a week, okay? So that's a lot of time. That's a big commitment. We're gonna stretch ourselves, but we know that's important, right? Because we all set the KRs together on the GIS team, the family, okay? So I'm gonna cover that off. So basically that's a roadmap. I may have another initiative, a couple of initiatives. So the family roadmap has maybe 1 or 2 major things we're gonna do. And then we have objectives and key results in there, but now it's measurable and we can go back to the maturity model and check ourselves, right? Before we wreck ourselves, as I say, just to make sure that yes, we're actually doing things and we're held accountable now because the key results are these measurable, tangible actions. So, okay, so what we did is there's our initiative, clarity and accountability. One of the objectives was we're going to adopt clear values and goals the family can get behind. And this is going to be measured by, so this is the OKR methodology. It's going to be measured by, we're going to have a family values day and create a vision board. That's one deliverable, right? We're going to develop a chart and we're going to post it in the mudroom. That's another one. And then as a family, we're going to create the 10 family accountability rules, okay? Just the very nature of getting those done, we feel is really going to help the family meet this objective, which is, adopt those clear values and goals. All right, Shazam. What do? We took a maturity model, good strategy, best practices, used the OKRs, and we were basically able to take strategy and action, and we bridged it by making something data-driven, okay? Shazam. Okay, so takeaway number 7. Even if you aren't able to jump into an engagement with MSD right now to really get into doing the full-on methodology from the start to the end. So you start with maturity and you end up with a roadmap. For you as a manager watching this, the OKRs are really, they're a magic tool. So hop on that and look at them. They're really helping a lot of organizations. We're looking at rolling it out in where I work on the day job. So super powerful stuff. All right, let's get back to that. So all of this stuff was driven out of the Slimgim sheet that's extended with this, methodology for coming up with data-driven strategy. Or what you can do is you can just grab the free Slimgim model, which is for GIS, enterprise GIS, and you can just play around with that one or play around with the family model. But this is just some of the many pages that we have in our report. And so everybody that's in this mass maturity group has access to this report, and they're actually using this as their GIS strategy, okay? And it's data-driven. And yes, it prints nicely to PDF, but if you notice here, there's like little pop-ups, and that's just because it's a BI report, and you can interact with the widgets in the report, okay? So in closing, all this stuff is, you have to learn the practice, right? And so it's a different way of thinking, and it's very much like using a model to gauge how well you're doing. And then the goal is to just get better. And so the plan, the roadmap will help you do that. And you have to basically start leveraging OKR. So it's something that has to be practiced. You're never going to get it right the first time. No one does. And you have to just get in there and start getting some traction. That's why we recommend working with MSD, for instance. Like they're up or down. Sorry, I'm in Northern Ontario, Canada, but down over there. You can work with that group to actually, especially in the district, you want to work together to actually do a benchmark to actually understand how everybody's doing and create an overall strategy, right? If you want to do a composite of the individual ones. And then don't overthink it. So this is designed around, yes, we put a lot of thought in the design, but what it is it's something that the process will just get in it, right? Don't overthink it. Don't get lost in what you think strategy should be. This guides you through the whole process. And you should put maturity as a service at the heart of your strategy, right? Take Slimgim, get it right in the heart of your strategy. How? First, it's going to really help you identify what the challenges are. It's going to help you set some like improvement initiatives that are pretty much standard. Okay, it's standard for most digital transformations. You're going to set your objectives. They're going to be clear objectives, and they'll be accountable. And more importantly, you're going to have a bunch of key results. All of that is data driven, right? And it will feed into your next assessment. So you actually know not just your state of things now, but it actually will give you a really good idea of how well your strategy is performing. So you can adjust it, tweak it. We're trying these things, it didn't help. And doing an assessment with a guide like Izabela, for instance, they can actually help point out some of those issues. So when you actually do your executive reporting in your next assessment, you can bring to light the issues, right? Like senior leadership isn't learning how to take advantage of this yet. That's a challenge in a lot of places. So you can use that to raise awareness and really try to get rid of those challenges so that you can move forward. All right, thank you. Izabela, you have anything to add?
No, thank you for watching us, and thank you for having us at UJIC first virtual conference. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or you need help. You want to set something up, and I am more than happy to help. And the whole point is to help your organization grow and spread the love of GIS. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.